You've likely seen on television these colorfully dressed men, equipped traditionally, guarding the Pope, the Swiss Pontifical Guard. But who are these men? Are they real soldiers, or do they only serve for show? And why Swiss? I will explain all of this to you in a few minutes. The Swiss Guard, officially founded in 1506 by Pope Julius II, traces its origins back to the 15th century through Swiss mercenaries hired by various European powers. But why the Swiss? The reason is very simple. At the time, the Swiss had a solid warrior reputation, as well as the reputation of being reliable mercenaries who were faithful to their commitments. In fact, the Pope is neither the only one nor the first to have had this idea. As early as 1497, King Charles VII of France established a Swiss Guard that remained attached to the royal power in various forms, until the French Revolution, where it illustrates this reliability and loyalty in the defense of the Tuileries Palace, attacked by the French revolutionaries. Between the 16th and 19th century, Swiss Guards were attached to the protection of various European powers, including Austria, independent Savoy, and different German and Italian states. As for the Pontifical Swiss Guard, it is initially attached to what is called the Pope's house. That is, they are directly in the service of the Pope rather than in the service of the state. Unlike other Swiss mercenaries who depend on the Papal States, the Swiss Guard is not there to parade in the 16th century and is brought to participate in combat with the rest of the Papal army. Caspar von Silenen, the first commander of the Guard, dies in battle serving the Pope at the Battle of Rimini in 1517. It is also at this time that the Guard had the most members, with a strength of 300 men. The warrior value of the Pontifical Swiss Guard is quickly put to the test again. In 1527, Rome, the Pope's residence, is devastated by the troops of Emperor Charles V, who leads Spain and much of Central Europe. The Pontifical Swiss Guards sacrifice themselves to ensure the Pope's safety in the castle of St. Angel, staying true to their commitment. 147 Swiss Guards die, over 3/4 of the Guard's strength at the time. This event is still celebrated today every May 6th, which is the day of the recruits' swearing-in ceremony. It is also the subject of a well-known song by the metal band Sabaton. This devastating event for the elite Guard's ranks, combined with Europe's political religious tensions at the time. The Guard temporarily disappears, reappearing about 20 years later in 1548. From that moment on, for political reasons, the command of the Swiss Guard is essentially entrusted to men from the German-speaking Swiss canton of Lucerne. From 1571, however, some of the Guard is again sent to combat. Surprisingly, the Swiss were sought after for a naval battle. Historian David Alvarez recounts how a detachment of the Swiss Pontifical Guard distinguished itself during the famous Battle of Lepanto, where a Christian coalition faced the powerful Ottoman Empire. She follows the Pope's fate, which I will also discuss in the video that appears at the end. To put it simply, for nearly 3 centuries, the Swiss Guard has not seen combat and is separate from the Papal States Army, to serve in essence only for ceremonies and maintaining order. The Pope's authority over his lands is threatened during the French Revolutionary and Napoleonic Wars, jeopardizing the papacy's existence until 1815. The Pope ordered the Swiss Guard not to fight, so the French disarmed and dissolved them twice, in 1799 as well as in 1809, before being reformed subsequently, each time in 1825. The Holy See, a term that simply refers to the central government of the Catholic Church, sets up a new agreement with the Swiss canton of Lucerne to centralize and manage the recruitment of the Guard. This was the final one since 1848. The Federal Constitution of Switzerland forbids any new agreement of this type, pushing the Pope of the time, Pius IX, to conclude an agreement directly with the Guard, which becomes a legally detached entity from any Swiss territory, depending only on the pontifical authority for its management and now recruiting exclusively by the individual will of the candidates. This operation is still in effect today. The prolonged military inactivity led to the deterioration of discipline and martial skills in the Guard, worsened by corruption. Senior officers lining their pockets at the expense of their subordinates. The situation is such that the Guard mutinies several times against these officers, all of which seriously undermines the credibility of the Guard, which is simply at risk of disappearing. However, it regains its colors in 1848, when the guard is entrusted to an experienced Swiss military man, Franz Meyer von Schönse. This latter is in some way the second father of the Swiss Guard. His reforms give meaning to the Guard and lay the foundations of the current Guard. Under his influence, it rapidly regains its colors and discipline is restored. It's fortunate since Rome is shaken by serious political troubles starting from April 1848. In the doubly explosive context of the Italian Unification War on one hand, and the period of uprising that we now call the Spring of Nations on the other hand. In November of the same year, things become seriously complicated for the Pope, indicating that his Swiss Guard will face significant challenges. In a context of high political tensions, Rome rises up and proclaims the Roman Republic. The papal army no longer defends the Pope, with some elements even joining the insurgents, with the exception of the Swiss Guard, freshly reformed by its new commander, which remains faithful to its duty to protect the Pope. On November 16th, things deteriorate. The Pope is directly threatened. The Swiss Guard must intervene. The Swiss Guard, the sole armed force left defending the Pope, had only 120 men at the time. That day, 50 of them are at the Vatican and 70 are with the Pope in his palace at the time, the Quirinal Palace. The situation worsens at the palace. Commander Meyer von Schönse arms his men with old muskets from the pontifical arsenal in response to the emergency, and he barricades the palace, in front of which a restless Republican crowd gathers, joined by a part of the pontifical army. The Pope is isolated in his palace with only 2 cardinals accompanying him. The remaining foreign diplomats, servants who stayed, and his Swiss Guard are still present. Turning to a diplomat, he reads, "The Quirinal is deserted. Almost everyone has abandoned me. If you were not here, I would be alone with the blades of the brave who defend me." While a delegation of Republicans from this crowd is inside the palace to negotiate a solution directly with the Pope, the crowd grows hostile, chanting "Death to the Swiss" repeatedly, before they start stoning the guard and attempting to burn down the building where their own delegation is situated. As a reminder, in the ensuing tumult, a gunshot is fired without us being certain today of its author, each having since, of course, accused the other. The Swiss Guard fires into the crowd, causing several people to collapse. The crowd revolts and both Republican and former papal soldiers fight back. A real battle then breaks out around the Pyrenees Palace, defended by its 70 Swiss. Chaos ensues, and the frightened Republican delegation fears they are trapped. While the Pope tells them they are not his prisoners and they can join their own, the delegates refuse for fear of being caught in a crossfire. That's when the commander of the guard himself, Colonel Meyer von Schönse, in an attempt to calm the situation, offers to personally escort them to the heart of the square where the crowd is gathered. In exchange, he asks them to ensure his safety during the operation, which they agree to. The colonel escorts the delegation, which departs promptly without instructions, leaving the Swiss military man alone with the crowd. When asked by the revolutionaries if he sides with the people or the Pope, he soberly replies, "I am on the side of my duty." This response perfectly embodies what made the Swiss wars successful in Europe. Although being a well-commanded mercenary troop, they are reliable and loyal soldiers. The respected veteran officer of past pontifical wars is released within hours, ending the situation well for him, after they placed him in front of a cannon, even threatening to blow him up. A situation to which he responded with great composure, stating that he recognized the cannon he would have used in a previous battle. This release allows him to resume command of the guard. Under pressure, the Pope concedes to the Roman Republic's political demands the following day, instructing his guard to disarm. This leads to the temporary dissolution of the Pontifical Swiss Guard, which reappears the following year when the revolutionaries are defeated by the French and Austrians. Subsequently, the reforms bear fruit. This continues until the Papal State's definitive fall in 1870, after which the Pope is confined to the Vatican. The Holy See is poorer, resulting in frozen salaries for its Swiss Guard and a 50% reduction in staff, without necessarily asking less of them. In 1878, the Guard, at their wits' end, mutinied and only returned to their barracks after the Pope offered them a year's salary. Afterward, the Guard receives better funding and modernizes its equipment with high-quality modern rifles. In 1910, the Swiss Guard entered the final phase of forming its current identity, when it appointed the French-speaking Swiss commander Jules Ripoll. He reformed the Guard one last time, whose role was then ambiguous between ceremonial and military. He transformed it into an elite corps with modern military equipment, including German Mauser rifles, machine guns, and grenades. For example, all the guards are armed with rifles and a handgun during their night watch. It is also at this time that the Swiss Guard takes on the colors that we know today, and its various outfits and uniforms are defined. If you had visited the Vatican in 1900 prior to Commander Ripoll's arrival, you wouldn't have recognized the Swiss Guard. The iconic, colorful outfit we recognize today is only a century old. Previously, the Guard's outfit simply evolved over time to match the standards of their respective eras. The Guards briefly wore pointed helmets, Prussian style. As you now understand, the equipment in the Guard's outfit have not remained unchanged since its creation, contrary to a very widespread idea. At the start of World War I, the Swiss Army mobilized to maintain the nation's neutrality. As a result, many Guards who are Swiss citizens before being the Pope's Guards are recalled to serve in the Confederation's army. This causes a severe short-term Guard understaffing, rectified by 1915, once the Guards are exempted from service in Switzerland and allowed to resume their post. In Rome, the Vatican only faces real danger from 1943 onwards during the World War II. When Mussolini's fascist regime collapses, when the German army enters Rome and the Allied bombers really start to target the city and its surroundings, so that year the Swiss Guard is on alert and gears up for war. Except for ceremonial posts, they are constantly equipped and ready for combat with rifles and handguns. This firm mobilization, with the help of the Pontifical Gendarmerie, manages to maintain the Vatican's armed neutrality, despite tense confrontations between the Guard, German troops, and their fascist allies. The Swiss Guard continues to exist today, avoiding the significant reform of the Papal Armed Force in 1970. Along with the Pontifical Gendarmerie, it remains the Pope's sole security force, while being regularly modernized since then, having roughly up-to-date equipment. Note that the halberds and cuirasses, while distinctive, are merely ceremonial weapons. The Swiss Guard has an armory with assault rifles, machine guns, handguns, and more. From this perspective, they are ideal for their era and purpose, undoubtedly tasked with ceremonial responsibilities. The Pontifical Swiss Guard is a military and law enforcement unit. Thus, they now require minimal equipment to carry out their numerous missions serving the Pope. And if nowadays you wanted to join the Pontifical Swiss Guard, would that be possible? Well, for most of you who are watching me, you are probably not eligible. To claim to join the prestigious Pontifical Swiss Guard, there are a bunch of conditions. You must be of Swiss nationality, of Catholic religion, Catholic, under 30 years old and single at the time of recruitment. Enjoy an excellent reputation, measure more than 1.74 m, even if this condition has been relaxed, and have completed your military service in Switzerland. If you meet the requirements, there's good news. The Swiss Guard is recruiting. Today, the Pontifical Swiss Guard not only protects the Pope, but also accompanies him on his travels. It also controls access to the Vatican State, whose unusual and turbulent history I will share with you momentarily, as well as order and honor services. It directly depends on the Pope, who is its supreme leader. Pope Francis recently increased its regulatory staff from 110 to 135 men. Currently, it is the Swiss cantons of Lucerne, obviously, but also Saint-Gall, as well as the French-speaking canton of Valais that provide the most recruits. Now that you know why the Pope is surrounded by a Swiss Guard and understand the history of his military, in the service of the head of the Catholic Church, I have a question for you. Do you know since when the Vatican, the Pope's state, exists? And do you know why the head of the Catholic Church has his own country? If you couldn't answer these questions, this video is for you.